The snow fell in sheets, each flake a tiny blade of ice cutting through the darkness. The mountain lodge groaned under the weight of the storm, windows rattling as if the blizzard itself was trying to break through, to steal the warmth, to pull everything into the white void beyond. Inside, the fireplace burned orange and gold, but the heat could not reach the man kneeling on the hardwood floor. Matteo Castelliano's hands trembled. These hands had signed documents that ended men's lives. These hands had crushed empires. These hands had held his empire together through 30 years of blood and loyalty and terrible choices. Now they were useless. Completely useless. His mother Elena lay on the Persian rug near the fireplace, her face the color of old ash, her breathing shallow as water. The doctors stood frozen, one of them gripping a stethoscope like it might save him from speaking the words he had to speak. AB negative, the doctor whispered. Her blood type is AB negative. We need a transfusion immediately. The roads are sealed. 8 feet of snow. No helicopter can fly in this. The nearest compatible blood bank is 40 miles away. The wind hammered against the windows like something alive, something hungry. Tony and Pietro stood against the wall in their dark suits, their shoulders broad enough to block out light, but neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The most feared lieutenant in Philadelphia stood paralyzed. The second most feared lieutenant stood paralyzed. And the man they both answered to knelt on the floor, his jaw clenched so hard the muscle beneath his skin jumped and jumped. Matteo reached for his mother's hand. Her skin was ice. Her pulse was thread-thin, barely there, like holding the wrist of someone already halfway gone. Find blood, he said. His voice came out like gravel under tires. I do not care how. Call every hospital in the state. Call Boston. Call New York. Someone has AB negative blood. Find it. The doctor shook his head. A small motion. A terrible motion. Sir, the roads. I do not care about the roads. The sound that came next was not wind. It was a knock on the back door. The service entrance. The door the groceries had been delivered through 20 minutes earlier. Pietro moved toward it without thinking. His hand rested on the revolver beneath his jacket as he opened the door. Snow spilled across the threshold like a tide of white death. And standing in the storm stood a girl in a coat that had been mended so many times the original color had been forgotten. Aria Winters was 28 years old but looked older. Her hands were calloused from work. Her hair was dark and pulled back so tight it made her scalp ache. Her eyes were the blue-green of shallow water, and right now those eyes held something that the men in this room had not seen in a very long time. She held the empty delivery crate against her chest. Behind her, the wind screamed and screamed. I'm sorry, she said. Her voice trembled like a candle in the wind. I think I left my glove inside. When I brought the groceries. I was wondering if... She stopped. Something in the room had changed. The quality of the air. The sound of the breathing. The way these men stood. What happened? She asked. No one answered. Tony stared through her. Pietro gripped the edge of the door as if it might keep him from drowning. And then Aria heard it, not a sound, but the absence of a sound. The terrible silence of a moment when something precious is slipping away. She stepped inside. Matteo Castelliano did not look up. He was still kneeling. His dark hair, silvered at the temples, caught the firelight. His hand still held his mother's hand. But his shoulders had gone very still, the way a man goes still when he has just understood that all his power means nothing, that all his money means nothing, that all his empire means nothing against a woman's failing heartbeat. Aria Winters looked at Elena Castelliano's grey face. She looked at the doctor's frozen expressions. She looked at the two enormous men in suits who seemed to be holding their breath. She set down her empty crate. She unbuttoned her coat with fingers that did not shake, though everything inside her shook. She pushed up the sleeve of her thin shirt. On her wrist, faintly visible, were scars running in every direction like a map of a country no one wanted to visit. What's her blood type? Aria asked. The doctor blinked. What? Her blood type. You were talking about blood type. You said AB negative. The doctor's voice came out very small. Yes. AB negative. Aria rolled up her other sleeve. I'm AB negative. Take mine. The room did not move. The wind outside did not move. The snow did not move. For a single suspended moment, the entire world held its breath. You cannot give blood to a stranger, the doctor said. This was not a medical statement. This was a man stating the obvious to someone who did not understand it. She is bleeding inside, Aria said. It was not a question. And I have blood. So you take it. Matteo Castellano looked up for the first time. He saw a girl standing in a borrowed coat with ash stains still visible on her jeans. He saw hands that had clearly worked for every single moment of her life. He saw a face that held something most people lose before they turn 18. He saw courage. Not the courage of a soldier. Not the courage of a man who has trained to face death. The courage of someone who had nothing left to lose, and therefore nothing left to fear. He did not speak. He simply nodded to the doctor. 30 minutes later, Aria Winters lay on a couch in the library, cotton pressed to the crook of her arm where the needle had gone in. Her head felt light and distant, as if she were floating somewhere above her own body. The blood they drew moved through tubes, moved into the Mountain Lodge's small medical station, moved into Elena Castellano's arm. And Matteo Castellano sat in a leather chair across from her, watching her with eyes the color of a storm gathering on the horizon. He did not speak. He had not spoken since she had stepped forward. Tony and Pietro had exchanged a look in the doorway, a look that said, in all the years we have worked for this man, we have never seen him still like this. In all the years, we have never seen him look at anyone the way he is looking at her. When the blood was finished, the doctor stepped back. Elena's breathing had changed. It had become deeper. The grey color had begun to retreat from her face like a tide pulling back from land. The man who controlled Philadelphia's underworld stood and walked to the window. Outside, the blizzard continued its assault on the world. Inside, a girl with exactly $5 in her pocket and no place to sleep lay on a couch in a mansion worth more than she would earn in 50 lifetimes, and had just given part of herself to save the life of a stranger. But what Aria did not know was that the man standing at the window had lost his first child 42 years ago. That there was a locked nursery on the second floor with a crib that no one had ever slept in, with toys no hands had ever held. That he had spent for decades believing humanity was something that happened to other people, not to men like him. That he had spent for decades wrong. He closed his eyes. And in the darkness behind his eyes, something cold and dangerous stirred in his chest, something he had buried so deep he thought it was dead. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. If you believe in second chances, if you believe in the power of one small act of kindness to change everything, share this video with someone you love. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because what happens after this moment will destroy both of their lives and rebuild them into something neither of them could have imagined. Now let us go back. Let us go back 3 days earlier, to the moment when Aria Winters stood in the ashes of everything she had ever known. 3 days earlier, the apartment was still smoking. Aria Winters stood in what used to be her bedroom, the floorboards beneath her feet hot enough to sting through the holes in her shoes. The walls were gone. The ceiling was gone. What remained was a skeleton of blackened beams and ash so thick it hung in the air like fog, coating her throat, her lungs, the last photograph she owned. She held it carefully. Marcus and Lily at the beach. Marcus's arm around their daughter's shoulders, both of them laughing at something the photographer had said. The edges were singed brown. One corner had melted slightly, warping Lily's smile into something almost unrecognizable. But it was still them. It was still the only proof that her family had existed. The fire inspector had left an hour ago. He said it started in the kitchen, probably faulty wiring in the wall. He said she was lucky to have been at work. He said it could have been much worse. He did not understand that it was already worse than worse. It was complete. Aria turned slowly, her eyes moving across the rubble. A dresser leg. A handful of books, their pages curled and blackened. The metal frame of the bed where she had slept next to Marcus for 9 years before the cancer took him. The metal frame of the cot where Lily slept. Everything else was particles. Everything else was memory. In the kitchen, or what used to be the kitchen, she found her purse. The leather was scorched but intact. Inside were bills. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 $1 bills. That was everything the bank had not taken. That was everything the creditors had not seized. $5 stood between her and nothing. The foreclosure notice had arrived 3 weeks after Marcus died. $150,000 in gambling debt she knew nothing about. Debt he had hidden for 2 years, taking money from loan sharks with names like Dominic and Sal, men who appeared at the funeral with flowers and expressions of sympathy that felt like threats. When she could not pay, they had given her 12 days. 12 days to produce $150,000 or lose the apartment, the car, the custody petition for Lily that was already being challenged by Marcus's sister who had money and lawyers, and the kind of certainty that came from never having to count her change. 3 days had already passed. The apartment next door was empty. She could hear Mrs. Chen's television through the wall, the sound of Mandarin voices and canned laughter. The building had not burned. Only hers had burned. Only hers. Outside, the November wind tore through the streets like a blade wrapped in ice. Lily sat on the curb in borrowed clothes from the neighbor downstairs, a 6-year-old in a coat 3 sizes too big, her small hands shoved deep in pockets that reached her knees. She did not cry. She had learned not to cry. She watched her mother approach with the same expression she wore when Aria told her that Daddy was not coming home, that they were going to stay with Mrs. Chen for a while, that everything was going to be different now. Aria knelt down. The asphalt bit into her knees. She smoothed Lily's hair, which was matted with smoke and ash. "We have to find work today," Aria said. "Today is very important." Lily nodded without asking why. She was old enough now to understand that important and desperate meant the same thing. The delivery company did not ask questions. They hired her at a coffee shop on Broad Street, gave her a uniform that did not fit, and a bicycle that probably belonged to someone else before her. The pay was $12 an hour in cash, no paperwork, no background check, no way to trace her to the loan sharks who were surely asking questions already. $12 an hour in cash meant that in 12 hours she could make enough money to feed Lily for a week. In 12 hours, she could maybe stop the world from ending, or at least delay it long enough for a miracle to arrive. The miracle did not arrive. What arrived was a blizzard. By noon, the city had disappeared into white. The streets became canyons of snow and wind, and Aria pedaled through them with her deliveries stacked in a metal carrier on the back of the bicycle, her fingers numb, her breath visible like cigarette smoke in the air. She delivered coffee orders to office buildings, take-out containers to apartments, legal documents to law firms where men in suits looked through her as if she were part of the building itself, as invisible as the walls. One delivery took her to the edge of the city, to a neighborhood where the houses became mansions, where the properties required gates and long driveways, where the mailboxes alone cost more than everything Aria owned. The snow fell harder here, accumulating on black iron fences and the hoods of expensive cars. The address was at the end of a tree-lined drive, a 3-story stone building with dark windows and a fountain in the front yard that had frozen solid. She was halfway up the drive when her bicycle hit something buried in the snow. It sent her over the handlebars. She caught herself with her hands, felt her palms scrape against ice and asphalt. The bicycle lay on its side, the delivery still intact, miracle of miracles. And in the snow where her wheel had caught, something black gleamed. A wallet. It was leather, supple and expensive, the kind of thing that cost more than a week of her life. Inside were $800 in cash, several credit cards, and a photograph. Aria's hands trembled as she held it. The photograph was old, printed on paper that had yellowed with age. A woman held an infant, her eyes closed, her face peaceful but wrong somehow. The baby was small, impossibly small, and absolutely still. Not sleeping. Not moving. Just small and still and gone. Someone loved that picture enough to carry it everywhere. She could take the cash. $800 would buy them time. $800 would mean that Lily could stay in school, that the electricity would not be shut off, that she could make a payment on a debt that would buy her more than 3 days. Instead, she found the business card inside the wallet. Matteo Castelliano. An address. A phone number. She took the photograph with her to the mansion. The man who answered the door was tall, with a scar that ran from his eye to his jaw like a crack in stone. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. His eyes moved across her, the bicycle, the uniform, the torn delivery bag, with a kind of assessment that missed nothing. "I found a wallet," she said. Her voice trembled. "In the snow. I think it belongs to someone who lives here." The man took it from her hands. He opened it. He looked at the cash first, which should have told her something. Then he looked at the photograph, and his entire body went very still. "Where did you find this?" His voice was quiet, which somehow made it worse. "At the bottom of the drive. Near the gate." He did not thank her. He did not offer her anything. He just closed the wallet and stepped back inside the mansion, closing the door without another word. Aria pedaled away into the snow, thinking only that she had made a mistake, that she should have taken the cash, that charity was a luxury she could no longer afford. On the second floor of the mansion, Matteo Castelliano stood at a window and watched the delivery girl disappear into the blizzard. In his hands, he held the photograph of Sophia and Antonio, his wife and his stillborn son, the only picture he had of both of them together. He turned to find Pietro standing in the doorway. "Get everything," Matteo said. His voice came out like an oath, deep and absolute. "Everything about her. Where she lives. Who she works for. Every name she has ever used. Every debt she owes. I want to know everything." Pietro nodded and withdrew. What changed everything was a single moment of mercy that Aria Winters did not know would reshape her life. But in the mansion, in the locked nursery on the second floor where no one had ever slept, Matteo Castelliano stood in the darkness and felt something he had buried 42 years ago begin to stir in his chest like a prayer he thought had died. The lodge burned warm against the mountain night, its stone walls absorbing the blizzard like a fortress. Inside, near the fireplace that roared with orange flames, Matteo Castelliano sat with the delivery girl whose name he now knew was Aria Winters. She held a glass of orange juice with both hands, still pale from giving blood, still trembling slightly from the enormity of what she had just done for a stranger. Tony watched from the doorway, his expression unreadable. In 15 years of working for Matteo Castelliano, he had never seen his boss sit across from anyone like this, close enough to smell the winter on her clothes, close enough that when she spoke, his entire body leaned forward to listen. "The photograph," Matteo said. His voice came out deep and solid like an oath. "Inside the wallet you returned. Do you know what it was?" Aria shook her head. The firelight caught her eyes, turning them gold. "My wife," he continued. "And my son. The only picture I have of them together." She was holding him. He never drew a single breath, but she was holding him anyway, and I photographed that moment because it was all I would ever have. The room fell silent except for the wind howling outside like something wounded. Aria set down her juice. Her hands no longer shook. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "You returned it without knowing what it was," Matteo said. "You could have taken the cash. There was $3,000 in that wallet. But you returned it to a stranger, to a man you did not recognize, and you asked for nothing." "It wasn't mine to keep," Aria said. Something flickered across Matteo's face. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the snow fell so thick the world had disappeared. He placed his palm against the glass, and his hand looked enormous, powerful, capable of crushing stone. When he turned back, his eyes had changed. Tell me about your daughter, he said. Aria hesitated. Everything in her screamed that she should protect this information, lock it away, keep this man at a distance. But the day had cracked something open in her. She had given blood to save a stranger. The rules no longer seemed to apply. Lily, Aria said. She's 6 years old. She loves yellow. She wants to be a veterinarian because she found an injured bird in our apartment and nursed it back to health. She asks every night if we can go home. I tell her we will, but I'm running out of time to make that true. How much time? Matteo asked. 10 days, Aria said. The number came out like a curse. The creditor sees everything in 10 days. My husband left $150,000 in gambling debts. I didn't know. I found out after he died, after the car accident. I've been paying it down, but every payment is $1,000 less for food, for heat, for rent. Then the fire took the apartment. Everything burned except one photograph. Lily found my college acceptance letter in the ashes. She asked if I was going to be a teacher. She laughed, but it was bitter, broken like fractured glass. I was supposed to be a teacher, Aria continued. Penn State. Full scholarship. Then I met Marcus and I thought love was enough. Turns out love doesn't pay debts. Love doesn't buy medicine when your daughter's coughing so hard she can't sleep. Matteo listened without interrupting. His men had learned long ago that when he was silent like this, his entire consciousness was focused on one thing. Right now, that thing was the woman sitting by his fire. I have $5 in my pocket, Aria said. That is all I have left in the world. And in 10 days, I will lose even the ability to take care of my daughter. She did not cry. Her tears had dried up somewhere on a Greyhound bus between Philadelphia and the mountains. Instead, she stared at the fire as if the flames held answers. Matteo sat back down. He was closer now, close enough that she could see the scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone, a map of some ancient violence. I will pay your debt, he said. Aria stood immediately. No. Absolutely not. I won't be. You won't be owned, Matteo interrupted. You'll be free. Consider it a debt paid for a life saved. My mother was dying today. You didn't hesitate. You didn't calculate what you might get in return. You simply gave what was needed. That is a quality rarer than diamonds, Aria. It is also worth $150,000 to me. There has to be something you want, Aria said. No one gives anything for nothing. That's not how the world works. Matteo stood and walked to the window again. The snow continued to fall, and the wind continued to claw at the glass like something desperate to break through. I want you to stop being afraid, he said. I want you to look at your daughter and tell her that you can go home. I want you to finish that degree. I want you to become the teacher you were meant to be. That is what I want, Aria. I want to see you live instead of simply survive. She did not believe him. But something in his voice, something in the way he said her name like it was sacred, made her want to. Before she could respond, the sound of an engine pierced the night. A snowmobile, cutting through the white darkness. Tony moved immediately, and going to the gun beneath his jacket. The engine died. The door opened, and Preston Mercer stepped inside, snow covering his designer coat like diamonds on cashmere. Preston was handsome in the way predators are handsome, everything arranged to appeal but nothing genuine underneath. His smile spread across his face like a blade. "Uncle," he said. "I was so worried when I heard about grandmother's collapse. Had to come check on everyone." Matteo's expression did not change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "How did you know about your grandmother?" Matteo asked. "Pietro called me," Preston lied smoothly. "Said she had a medical emergency. Family sticks together, right?" He looked at Aria, and his eyes changed. They became calculating, assessing, dangerous. "You must be the helpful delivery girl," Preston said. His voice was silk over steel. "The one who returned my uncle's property. How very kind of you." That night, Aria could not sleep. At 2 a.m., she sat by the dying fire with a blanket around her shoulders, staring at the embers, trying to understand if she had made a terrible mistake by accepting Matteo's offer. Trust was a luxury people like her could not afford. Trust was what her husband's addiction had shattered. Trust was what the creditors had destroyed when they began their phone calls. Matteo found her there, emerging from the shadows like he had always been watching. He sat across from her, and the fire cast his face half in darkness, half in copper light. "You cannot sleep," he said. "Not a question." "I keep thinking about what you said," Aria replied. "About the debt. About Lily. I'm afraid I'm going to wake up and find out this was a dream." "It is not a dream," Matteo said. "It is real. Tomorrow, my lawyer will handle everything. In 1 week, you will be free of the debt. In 2 weeks, you will enroll at Penn State. In 4 weeks, you will move into a safe place. And your daughter will learn what it means to have a home again." Aria looked at him. "Why? Really, why?" Matteo met her gaze. "Because you saved my mother. Because you returned my son's photograph. Because in a world that taught you that everything requires payment, you gave freely anyway. That makes you rare, Aria. That makes you worth saving." She wanted to believe him. More than anything, she wanted to believe that mercy existed without cost. From the landing above, Preston Mercer stood in darkness and recorded every word on his phone. His smile was cold. He had spent 5 years waiting for his uncle to stumble, waiting for the weakness to show. Now it had appeared in the form of a delivery girl with desperate eyes and a dead husband's debts. Preston knew exactly how to use her. He knew exactly how to tear everything apart. The snow falls heavier now, muffling sound until the world becomes nothing but white silence and the whisper of wind cutting through the lodge's corridors. Aria stands in the kitchen at 5 in the morning, her hands wrapped around a cold mug of coffee she cannot bring herself to drink. The USB drive sits on the counter between them like a small black bomb waiting to detonate her entire world. Footsteps approach from behind. She does not turn around. Preston Mercer enters the kitchen, his cashmere sweater draped over his shoulders like a cape, his face carrying the confidence of a man who has never been told no. He is 34 years old but moves with the carelessness of someone who has never known consequence. His eyes are pale blue and empty, the kind of eyes that look at people and see only obstacles or opportunities, never human beings. "You look tired," Preston says, moving toward the espresso machine as if he owns the kitchen. As if he owns her. "Did you sleep at all?" "Not much," Aria replies, her voice barely above a whisper. Preston smiles. It does not reach his eyes. He presses a button and the espresso machine hisses to life, a sharp sound that cuts through the silence like a blade. "I listened to the recording again," Preston says, his tone conversational, casual, the way a predator speaks before it strikes. "The one from last night. You and my uncle in front of the fire. Do you know what I heard? A desperate woman manipulating a grieving man. A woman who returned a photograph and suddenly expects him to erase $150,000 in debt. A woman who is playing him like a violin." Aria's hands begin to shake. She sets the mug down before Preston notices. "That's not what happened," she says. Preston turns to face her fully now. He is holding his phone in one hand, the screen glowing with the audio file. "Who will believe you? A widow with $5 in her pocket and a dead husband's debts? Or the nephew of Matteo Castelliano, a family man concerned about his uncle's judgment?" Preston steps closer. His voice drops, becomes softer, more dangerous. "I have recordings, Aria. I have evidence. And I will send it to every creditor hunting you, every news station in Philadelphia. I will make sure your daughter Lily sees her mother exposed as a gold-digging whore who preys on vulnerable men." The words land like punches. Aria's vision blurs. She thinks of Lily at her sister's apartment, asking when Mommy is coming home, her small voice uncertain, afraid. I didn't seduce anyone, Aria says. He offered. He wanted to help. Who will believe you? Preston repeats, and his smile widens. A broke widow versus a Castellano? The FBI loves cases like this. Wire fraud. Coercion. Seduction of a crime family head for financial gain. He holds out the USB drive, placing it on the counter in front of her. His hand lingers there for a moment, making sure she understands the weight of it. This contains access codes to all of my uncle's financial accounts. Tonight, when he's asleep, you will copy these codes and give them to me. If you don't, I will ruin your life. I will make sure you never see Lily again. And I will make certain that every dollar you owe comes due in 48 hours. Aria stares at the drive. It is so small. So insignificant. But holding it feels like holding the detonator to everything she has begun to rebuild. How do I know you won't expose me anyway? She asks. You don't, Preston says simply. But you also don't have a choice. Oh, and Aria? If you tell Matteo, I'll know. I have people watching you both. People you cannot see. People who will know the moment you open your mouth. He picks up his espresso, takes a sip, and leaves the kitchen without another word. The silence that follows is worse than the threat. It is thick and suffocating, like the lid of a coffin being sealed. 3 hours later, Cordelia Blackwood finds Aria in the lodge's sitting room, pretending to read a book about quantum physics, her eyes moving across the same paragraph for the 20th time without absorbing a single word. Cordelia is 56 years old but maintains the appearance of a woman 10 years younger through discipline and expensive procedures. Her hair is platinum blonde, pulled back so tightly it seems to stretch her skin. She wears a white cashmere dress that costs more than Aria's entire monthly budget used to be. Darling, Cordelia says, settling onto the sofa with the grace of someone accustomed to being admired, I thought we should talk. Woman to woman. Aria sets the book down slowly. Cordelia pulls out her phone and swipes through photographs. Images appear on the screen, one after another. Matteo with socialites at galas. Matteo with businesswomen at restaurants. Matteo with his hand on a blonde woman's back at a charity event. The photographs are designed to wound, selected with surgical precision. You think you are special, do you not? Cordelia asks, her voice smooth like honey poured over glass. You saved his mother. You returned a photograph. How very noble. But let me tell you what happens next in this story. He pays your debt. He puts you through university. You become his charity project, his good deed, his way of feeling like a man with a conscience. And then, when the novelty wears off, when you are no longer useful, when you have served your purpose, he will move on. Back to women like me. Back to his own world. Cordelia swipes to another image, this one of Matteo with a stunning woman in an evening gown. Men like him do not love women like you, Aria. They collect debts and call it kindness. They buy loyalty and call it love. You're lying, Aria says, but her voice wavers. Am I? Cordelia stands, smoothing her dress. Look around this lodge. Everything here costs money. Everything. Your borrowed coat. Your borrowed room. Your borrowed life. When the bill comes due, you will understand that nothing in this world is free. And you will understand what you truly are. Cordelia leaves, her perfume lingering in the air like a curse. That night, at 11 o'clock, Aria stands outside in the snow. The blizzard has lessened, but the cold is sharper now, more vicious. The wind cuts through her borrowed coat like it is made of paper. Her breath comes in visible gasps. The USB drive is in her hand, and her fingers are so numb she can barely feel it. She looks up at the lodge. Matteo's study light is off. The house is dark and silent except for the howl of wind through the eaves. She thinks about what Preston said. She thinks about what Cordelia said. She thinks about the $150,000, the creditors, the men who came to her apartment before the fire, their voices cold as they demanded payment. She could do it. She could go inside, find the study, copy the codes, hand them to Preston, disappear. She could save herself. She could disappear into a new city with a new name and keep Lily safe. She could. A window lights up above her. Lily's bedroom. Not Lily's actual bedroom, because Lily is still at her sister's apartment. But Aria sees it anyway, sees her daughter's face illuminated by that yellow light, sees her small voice asking about bravery. "Mommy, you're the bravest person I know." Aria closes her hand around the USB drive. Her vision blurs with tears that freeze the moment they touch her cheeks. She walks back inside. The lodge is dark and warm. She does not hesitate. She goes directly to Matteo's study, locks the door, and sits at his mahogany desk. Her hands shake as she reaches for her phone to call him. He answers on the second ring. It is 5 in the morning, Matteo says, and she can hear the concern in his voice. "Aria, what is wrong?" "I need you to listen to me," she says. "Without interrupting. Without doing anything until I finish. Can you do that?" "Yes." She tells him everything. Preston's threat. The recording. The USB drive. Cordelia's photographs. The 48-hour deadline. The fear. The doubt. The moment in the snow when she almost gave in. Matteo listens. The silence on the other end is so complete she can hear him breathing, steady and controlled. "Show me the drive," he says. Aria places it on the desk, and he comes to the study within minutes. He is wearing only a black shirt and dark pants, his feet bare against the stone floor. He looks at the drive, then at her. "You did the right thing," he says. "I almost didn't," Aria replies. Matteo picks up his phone and makes one call. His voice, when he speaks, is different now. It is not the voice of a man saying goodbye to someone he loves. It is the voice of the crime boss, deep and solid like an oath being sworn. "I need everyone. Now. All 12. 20 minutes later, the lodge's main room is full of men dressed in black tactical gear. They move like soldiers, efficient and silent. Tony and Pietro stand on either side of the door, their faces impassive. No one questions what is happening. No one asks why. Preston enters the main room with a glass of whiskey in his hand. His confidence is armor, expensive and thick. He does not see the trap until the doors close behind him and he realizes he is surrounded. "Uncle," Preston says, his voice uncertain for the first time. "What is this?" Matteo steps forward slowly. His shadow stretches across the floor like something alive. "You threatened an innocent woman," Matteo says. "You attempted to steal from me. You recorded private conversations without consent. You forgot the most important rule, nephew. Family does not weaponize the vulnerable. Family does not prey on the desperate." Preston's face goes white. He tries to run toward the door. Tony blocks his path with his shoulder, and Preston stumbles backward, falling to his knees. "Please, Uncle," Preston gasps, his words tumbling over each other. "I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I'll disappear. I'll leave the country. Please don't kill me." Matteo looks down at his nephew trembling on the marble floor like a cornered animal. "Death would be too quick," Matteo says. "Too easy. Too merciful." He makes another phone call. This one is to the FBI. Within 1 hour, federal agents arrive despite the snow. They move through the lodge with bureaucratic efficiency, taking photographs, collecting evidence, building a case. Preston screams and begs as they cuff him. The evidence Matteo provides is airtight: 3 years of embezzlement, $2 million stolen from family accounts, laundering operations, shell companies in 6 different states. 40 years, Tony says quietly to Pietro as they watch Preston being dragged toward the federal vehicles waiting outside. Federal prison. He will die inside. The next morning, Cordelia Blackwood wakes to her phone exploding with notifications. 1 million notifications. 2 million. A video has gone viral on every platform, every news station, every social media feed. Security footage from the lodge showing her cruel comments to Aria, her manipulations, her role in Preston's conspiracy. But there is more footage too, footage of her office, her computers, her private emails revealing millions in embezzled funds from the Children's Hope Foundation, money meant for orphans and instead spent on diamonds, vacations, and designer clothes. By noon, her face is on every screen in Philadelphia. Her arrest is captured on live television, cameras catching her in her silk nightgown as federal agents cuff her in her mansion, her face twisted in rage and humiliation. Her wealthy friends abandon her in hours. Her lawyer calls the evidence insurmountable. By evening, she is charged with 35 counts of fraud and embezzlement. Matteo watches the news coverage with Aria sitting beside him on the lodge's terrace. The sun is setting, painting the sky shades of amber and rose. They wanted to destroy you, Matteo says to her. Instead, they destroyed themselves. Why did they try? Aria asks. Because people like that cannot understand kindness without motive, Matteo replies. They cannot comprehend mercy that asks for nothing in return. Your goodness frightened them. It revealed what they are. Aria thinks about the USB drive, now in evidence lockup. She thinks about Preston screaming in federal custody. She thinks about Cordelia's public humiliation, the way her own world turned against her. She thinks about Lily's voice, "Mommy, you're the bravest person I know." And she finally understands that bravery is not the absence of fear. Bravery is choosing trust when every part of you wants to close off your heart forever. The snow has stopped falling. For the first time in 3 days, the sky opens, pale blue stretching across the mountain lodge where Matteo Castellano stands beside Aria Winters on the stone terrace, watching the world emerge from white silence. The sun breaks through clouds like a knife cutting through ice, and everything glimmers. Everything is clean. Matteo holds an envelope. Cream-colored, expensive, the kind of envelope that costs more than most people's weekly groceries. His hands are steady, but Aria notices his jaw tightening. In 15 years, Tony has never seen him hesitate before giving anything. "I want you to have this," Matteo says. His voice is solid, like an oath. Like stone. Aria does not move. She has learned that when powerful men offer gifts, there are always conditions buried inside the wrapping. "What is it?" "Open it." She takes the envelope. Her fingers tremble, not from cold, but from something deeper, something that whispers warnings her body understands even when her mind wants to believe. Inside is a cashier's check. $150,000. Every digit pressed into the paper with finality. The world stops. "I can't," she whispers. The words are barely audible, like breath fogging against winter glass. "I can't accept this." "It's already done," Matteo says. Every creditor has been paid. The foreclosure notice is cancelled. The hospital bills are satisfied. Your name is clear. You are free. Aria stares at the number on the check. 150,000. The exact amount that has been crushing her since the fire, since the debt collectors started calling at 3 in the morning, since she counted her pocket money every night and cried because $5 could not stretch into 12 days, let alone a lifetime. Tears stream down her face. She does not wipe them away. Why? Her voice breaks like glass. Why would you do this for me? Matteo steps closer. The mountain air is thin and cold between them. Because you returned my son's photograph when you had nothing in your pocket but $5. Because you saved my mother's life when my own hands were useless. Because Preston threatened you with exposure and debt, and you chose honesty over survival. And because you remind me that humanity still exists. That mercy is real. That goodness is not a weakness that leads to extinction. She wants to argue. She wants to refuse. but the check is warm in her hands, and the truth of her new life sits on the paper in black ink, paid in full, no balance due, no more running. "What do I owe you?" she asks. "Nothing," Matteo says. "You owe me nothing." 2 weeks pass. Aria is back in Philadelphia, in the small apartment she rented with her first paychecks from her new job at the community center. The walls are bare, she owns almost nothing, but they are hers. She and Lily sleep in beds without fear of eviction notices, without the sound of creditors pounding on the door. Matteo calls one afternoon. "I want to show you something. Will you come to the mansion?" The drive takes 40 minutes. Lily presses her face against the car window, counting the trees, asking questions about clouds and birds and whether mansions have kitchens as big as restaurants. Aria answers each one, her hand on her daughter's head, feeling the weight of safety for the first time in years. The mansion is even larger than Aria remembers, stone and columns and windows that seem to hold the entire sky. Matteo meets them in the foyer. He is wearing dark jeans and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and he looks at Lily the way Elena looked at him in the hospital, like she is the answer to a prayer he stopped believing in decades ago. "Would you like to see the house?" he asks Lily. Lily nods, and Matteo takes her small hand. He shows her the kitchen, and she climbs onto a stool and discovers that yes, it is as big as a restaurant. He shows her the library, and her eyes widen at the shelves climbing toward a ceiling she cannot see. He shows her the gardens, and she picks a flower, yellow, perfect, soft, which he lets her keep. Then Matteo leads them upstairs. Up, past the main bedrooms, past the portrait gallery where faces of serious men stare down from dark frames. He stops at a door on the second floor that Aria has never seen before. The door is closed. Has been closed. "I want to show her to you," Matteo says to Aria. "If you are ready." He unlocks the door. Inside, the world has stopped. A crib stands in the center of the room, white, beautiful, unused. On the shelves are toys still in their packaging, blocks, a wooden train, a stuffed animal in the shape of a lamb. A mobile hangs above the crib, its animals frozen mid-rotation. A rocking chair waits by the window, its wood polished, its cushion pristine and untouched. On the wall, painted in careful blue letters, is a name, Antonio. Aria cannot breathe. "My son," Matteo says. His voice is different now, softer, raw, like a door opening into a room he has kept locked from himself. He never drew a breath. "My wife was carrying him when she got sick. The doctors said the infection would kill them both if we did not act quickly. We chose her. We saved her. And she died anyway, 3 years later, and Antonio never existed outside of this room." Aria takes his hand. His palm is warm. His grip is careful, like he is learning how to touch something fragile without breaking it. "I locked this nursery 32 years ago," he continues. "I swore I would never open it again until I could forgive myself for failing to save him. For making the choice that took my wife and never gave me my son. I have stood outside this door 10,000 times. And I could never turn the key." "You didn't fail him," Aria says. Her words are simple, but they carry weight. Sometimes life just takes what we love most. Sometimes that is not about failure. Sometimes it is just about loss. Matteo looks at her. Really looks at her. His eyes are glistening, and for the first time, Tony, standing discreetly in the hallway, sees his boss as something other than invincible. He sees a man, stripped of armor, learning to forgive himself because a woman with nothing taught him how. "You saved my mother when I was helpless," Matteo says. "You showed me that the strongest person in the room is often the one with nothing left to lose. You gave me something I thought died in this nursery, hope. And now I realize that Antonio would have wanted me to live. To love. To let someone else in." Lily appears in the doorway, the yellow flower still in her hand. She looks at the crib, at the toys, at the name painted on the wall. "Was this baby sad?" she asks. Matteo kneels beside her, and when he speaks, his voice is like thunder gentled into a lullaby. He never got to feel sad. He never got to feel anything. So I am going to feel happy for him. I am going to feel joy. And maybe, if you let me, I will feel it with you and your mommy. Lily puts the flower on the rocking chair. So he can see it, she says. Something inside Matteo breaks open. That night, in the study, Matteo tells Aria about the lowest moment of his life. 3 months ago, before she returned his son's photograph, before his mother collapsed, he stood in that nursery with a gun. He had made a decision. He was going to end it. And then his mother called. She had fallen. She needed him. He put the gun down and drove to her, and she lived. She lived because he chose to answer the phone instead of choosing death. Aria tells him about the night before the fire. She stood on a bridge in Philadelphia, looking at the dark water, convinced that drowning would be easier than continuing. The debt was too heavy. The loneliness was suffocating. And then Lily called. "Mommy, where are you? Come home." And she stepped back from the edge. "We saved each other," Aria whispers, without knowing it. "Yes," Matteo says. "In the darkest moments, we saved each other." 3 months later, Matteo asks Aria to have dinner with him. Not as a debt, not as obligation, but as a choice. She says yes. The restaurant is quiet, candlelit, hidden away on a corner of a Philadelphia street where few people know to look. They sit for 4 hours. He asks about her dreams. She tells him she enrolled at Penn State, studying literature, planning to teach. He says, "Then you will teach." "I will make sure of it." She takes his hand across the table. "I don't want you to save me," she says. "I want you to walk beside me." He smiles, and Tony, who has followed them to ensure security, watches his boss smile like that for the first time in 32 years, and realizes that something fundamental has shifted in the world. 1 year later, Aria stands in a classroom at Penn State University, teaching her first literature course. 23 students sit before her, taking notes, asking questions, coming alive to the stories she tells. Lily sits in the front row during Bring Your Child to Work Day, beaming with pride, wearing a dress Aria bought with her own paychecks. After class, Matteo is waiting outside with flowers. White roses, simple, beautiful. He has changed. Tony and Pietro notice it every day now. The coldness in his eyes has thawed, the hardness in his face has softened. He speaks about legacy differently. He smiles more. He laughs. That evening, the 3 of them, Matteo, Aria, and Lily, sit in the mountain lodge where everything began. The same fireplace crackles. The same windows frame the mountains. But now there is warmth here. There is laughter. There is life returning to a place that held only crisis 3 months ago. Lily asks Matteo to read her a bedtime story. He does. His voice is gentle as he describes a kingdom where lost people find their way home, where broken hearts learn to trust again, where darkness does not last forever. Aria watches from the doorway, seeing a man learning to forgive himself, learning to love without conditions, learning that the strongest choice is not to close your heart, it is to open it. 3 months later, Matteo takes Aria back to the bench where Preston threatened her. He kneels in fresh snow and shows her a ring, the diamond, simple, perfect. "I have lived in darkness for 32 years, he says. "You brought me light. Will you marry me?" She says yes before he finishes. 6 months later, in the nursery that is no longer a tomb, the wedding takes place. The walls are painted yellow now. Lily plays in the corner with toys that are no longer in packages. Elena, healthy and strong, cries tears of joy. Tony and Pietro stand as witnesses. Matteo and Aria exchange vows about second chances, about choosing trust over fear, about becoming whole again. 1 year after that, Aria stands in her office at Penn State. A framed photograph hangs on the wall, the torn college acceptance letter, finally framed, finally honored. Beside it is a photo of Matteo, Aria, and Lily at the mountain lodge, all 3 smiling. Her hand rests on her belly. She is 7 months pregnant. On her ring finger, 2 bands of gold catch the light. Aria speaks, I thought I had lost everything in that fire. I thought I was drowning in debt and darkness with no way out. But on the worst night of my life, I saved a stranger who became my salvation. We were both broken. We were both lost. And we found each other in the space between fear and trust, between closing ourselves off and opening our hearts. Every day we choose between fear and trust, between closing ourselves off and opening our hearts. Choose trust. Choose to act when others freeze. Choose to see the humanity in unexpected places. Because sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back. If this story moved you, drop a like right now. Share it with someone who needs to hear that second chances are real, that kindness is never wasted, that the darkest nights sometimes lead to the brightest mornings. Subscribe because tomorrow we bring you another story of hope, redemption, and the courage to choose love over fear. Type trust in the comments if you believe in second chances. We will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.